All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Robert Gibbs, and I have the distinct honor and pleasure of serving as chair of the board for the Hope Credit Union. I'm delighted today that we are here for our annual meeting. As I look around the room, we have more than 15 participants, so we officially have a quorum, and I'm going to call our annual meeting to order. As everybody knows, this is not a typical year. 2020 has been unique from when this year started to now, and it doesn't appear that there is an end in sight. But we have to continue to conduct business, and that's why we are here today. Typically, our annual meeting is held in March, and at that time, we invite all of our members to come to be with us in person, where we conduct business of hope, and we also provide information which we think is useful for our members. Also, throughout the year, we go from region to regions to also have in-person meetings so that our members can learn what they want to learn about all of the great things that this organization is doing. But we're living in a pandemic now. But even with the pandemic, we have rules and regulations that we have to follow. And the National Credit Union Administration requires that we meet annually in person. So that's why we're here today. So even though we're late, we're going to do the business of hope. Today, we want to give as much information as possible. And since we can't allow more people to be here, we're actually having a virtual meeting today. So there's hopefully hundreds of other members who are throughout our footprint and throughout the country who are here today to find out a lot more about hope and conduct the business of hope. So we are delighted that you are here in person, and we're certainly delighted that all of you are tuned in wherever you are virtually so that you can hear and participate in our annual meeting today. We have an agenda that we're going to follow, which includes the approval of the minutes, the election of our board members, the financial report, the supervisory report, a report from our CEO, and then we'll have questions and answers if there are any, and then we will adjourn. So hopefully you have with you today the minutes of our last annual meeting, and if so, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes. It's been moved and seconded that the minutes of our last annual meeting be approved. Are there any discussions, any questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. All right, we will now go to our board member elections. And if you can see the board here today, and you can also see it virtually, we have several members who are current members of the board who are up for membership today. So they are Mauricio Calvo, Carolyn Gill Jefferson, Alice Graham, Brenda Richards Montgomery, and Emily Trenum. There is a nominating committee which consists of myself, Ivy Allen, and Bill Bynum, and we've evaluated each of these individuals. As I said, they are current board members, and we recommend that they continue. They've done an outstanding job, as all of our board members has. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve those 5 individuals to continue a 3-year term on the Hope Credit Union board. Is there a second? Second. All right, thank you. Is there any questions? If not, all in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Now call on Alan Branson, who will bring us our financial report.
All right, good afternoon. So this is an annual member meeting both for the Hope Enterprise Corporation and also Hope Credit Union, so I'll be reporting on both entities. I'll start out with Hope Enterprise Corporation. So we ended 2019 with approximately $180 million in assets and a strong capital position. You can see over the last several years, we've had quite a bit of growth, and most of that has been driven by new market tax credit transactions in the areas of healthcare, education, and other community facility projects. During 2020, we've got the first quarter up here, and we're just in, and I can tell you the second and third quarters, it's similar, that we've continued to grow in 2020 with additional new market tax credit projects and also the implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program loan lending activities. For the PPP lending, we've done more than $80 million in loans to over 2,500 small businesses. The expectation is that most of these loans will qualify for forgiveness from the SBA. We hope that process will start by the end of the year, but most likely most of the forgiveness is going to occur during 2021. The revenues and income in 2019 were on budget and have continued to be on budget so far in 2020. The PPP lending provided an unexpected source of income in 2020 for HEC, and that helped to offset some of the unexpected costs of responding to the pandemic. Management is actively monitoring the portfolio for effects from the pandemic and the recession, and so far the HEC portfolio is continuing to perform overall. For the rest of 2020, HEC is expected to outperform its operating budget and end the year with significant, albeit short-term, asset growth due to the PPP loan portfolio. That's the report for HEC. For the credit union, we ended 2019 with approximately $300 million in assets and a strong capital position. Growth has been steady over the last few years and primarily driven by new members and corresponding increases in the mortgage and commercial loan portfolios. Asset growth has continued in 2020 as members and partners have increased deposits in Hope, and these funds allowed for a number of positive activities. The credit union was able to launch its PPP lending in April before transitioning over to the Enterprise Corporation. We've continued lending in all three portfolios, consumer, mortgage, and commercial, even during a pandemic. And we were able to use some of the new cash this year to reduce the credit union's use of high-cost certificates to fund its lending activities. So the revenues and income in 2019 were on budget. The overall income in 2020 so far is on budget. However, the composition has changed a little bit from what was expected. Our revenues for 2020 have been lower than expected, and a couple of factors there. One is interest revenues are lower than projected. Some of that has to do with the pandemic and the recession. The Fed has lowered interest rates, and so interest rates as a whole have gone down, so our interest revenue has gone down. And then also when the pandemic started, we were very proactive in providing loan forbearance to our members to assist with the initial effects of the pandemic. More than 25% of our portfolio received some form of payment forbearance, and there has also been some increased delinquencies. While this was an action we took to support our membership, it also had the effect of decreasing our earnings in the short term. Our fee income has also been lower than expected, again, mainly because we reduced our fees at the start of the pandemic to support our members. And so, again, that was, so we provided member support, but it also had an impact in terms of our revenue. So in response to that, Hope reduced our operating expenses in 2020. We put a hiring freeze on new employees at the beginning of the year. There were a number of projects that we delayed or deferred. We stopped some expenses such as travel. So we were able to reduce our operating expenses to counter the effects of the reduced revenue. We've also increased our allowance for loan losses in response to increased delinquencies and also anticipating that when loans are coming off forbearance, there may be some increased expenses, that either through some type of loss that we suffer. But we are planning for that. And then we presented a revised budget to the board for approval in June to account for the new operating environment, so a much lower interest rate environment for the foreseeable future. With all of those factors taken into account, I'm glad to say that Hope is positioned to end the year meeting its revised budget with about 10 to 15% growth in total assets and the ability to maintain a strong capital position. So that's my report for Hope Credit Union. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alan. Are there any questions to Alan about the financial report? All right, thank you. We now will have our supervisory report from Fred Miller, and it will be done virtually. So, Scott.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. This is the report of Hope's Audit and Supervisory Committee. Our last meeting was September the 8th of 2020, and I do want to just say that we made a change this year. We changed auditing firms. We've been very pleased with the results that we've gotten. They've been timely, and they have engaged well with our staff. I also want to comment on the members of the committee. They have been very helpful. They're attentive, and they are not afraid to ask questions, which I think speaks well. We have reviewed all of the audit statements for the year, both internally and externally. And we have reviewed all the examination updates from the NCUA, our regulator. We have been updated on a regular basis about pandemic updates that the credit union has taken place. And other than that, I think that we have been very pleased with the staff and the work that they have done for the board and for the membership. Would be my report.
All right, thank you, Fred, and thank you for that report again. Are there any questions from the supervisory about the supervisory committee report? All right, if not, let me call on our CEO to give us a report. And I know you going to be excited about all of the great things that are happening at Hope. So, Bill, if you would come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. You know, like all of you, we'd much rather be meeting face-to-face today. For better or worse, we are used to adapting to less than ideal circumstances because many of the communities that we serve and live in constantly experience less than ideal circumstances. So we adapt. We adapt like people have across the Deep South for generations, for centuries. Here on the screen, you see an image of one of the key moments in the history of this country. This is the march from Selma to Montgomery, roughly 65 years ago, when Dr. King, when John Lewis put their lives on the line to make sure that people in the Deep South had access to the same opportunities that anyone, anywhere would have. And we have worked to build on that legacy over the years at Hope. We are in Memphis. We are in Alabama in the Black Belt. We're in the Mississippi Delta. We're in Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, a region that is home to some of the most deep and entrenched poverty, difficult conditions that exist in the United States. Hope exists to make sure that people are not limited because of their birthplace, where they live, their skin color, their gender, other things that they can't control. More often than not, addressing the challenges that confront people requires access to financial services. And so that's why Hope was created. 26 years ago for Hope Enterprise Corporation, and 25 years ago, right around the corner in the sanctuary here at Anderson United Methodist Church, Hope was established to make sure that people in the Deep South had access to the basic tools they needed to support their families and achieve a decent quality of life. It's interesting, on every Sunday morning, the church stopped. The pastor invited everyone to go out and make a deposit. So the first deposit was made here at Hope Credit Union. One of the first depositors, James Brooks, who was a longtime board member, passed this year. I remember him opening his account and then taking his grandchildren in there to set up an account. Now some of those children are grown and they're still members of Hope Credit Union. So it's great to be back here where it all started. We've come a long way from our first office, which was in the little closet of a room where we counted tithes and offering. We now have 30 roughly offices across the Deep South, but we are still working hard to make sure that people have the tools that they need. While we've come a long way, the global pandemic has really uncovered how much further we have to go. It's taken things to a much higher level of difficulty. My colleagues at Hope, 220 of the most skilled and dedicated professionals in the community and economic development industry, have gone above and beyond to help people in places across the Deep South navigate the challenges that have been created by this triple crisis: health, economic, and social justice. This upheaval has shaken the entire world and continues to hit particularly hard our members in the communities that we serve. Responding to the families and entrepreneurs who needed flexibility during this time has been front and center in the work that we've done. We have received and granted hundreds of requests for flexibility on payments from consumer borrowers, from mortgage borrowers, from small business borrowers, to help them survive this uncertain world that we live in. We revived what we called the Power of Hope program that we initially started after Hurricane Katrina to help people during another crisis, to help families who live below the poverty line, immigrants, very small businesses who receive little or no support from the federal stimulus programs. Related to this, in a normal year, Hope makes 40 to 50 small business loans across our entire footprint. Since April, our team processed over 7,300 Small Business Administration Paycheck Protection loans. We approved 2,900 plus loans, totaling over $85 million, helping 30,000 employees and their families. Many of these businesses have been turned away from traditional lenders, small mom and pop, minority women-owned businesses, hospitals, historically black colleges that are anchor institutions in their communities, nonprofit service providers that were helping people stay on their feet and survive this crisis, went to traditional banks and could not get financing, but they came to Hope, and we were able to help them. Our median loan size was roughly $11,000, much smaller than the major banks in the country were making, if they would make a loan to the communities that we serve. Similarly, we've been partnering with the Black Belt Community Foundation, the Foundation Mid-South, and the Alabama Black Belt, and here in Mississippi, to support small towns and county governments in the Delta and the Black Belt region of Alabama who needed bridge financing to access federal resources to purchase PPEs and other vital resources that save lives and help their communities and residents navigate the pandemic. We've seen so many gaps in other issues that some of the most vulnerable people in the country have experienced during this time. particularly with regard to relief and recovery programs. And so we've been monitoring and collaborating with advocates and allies in our region and across the country to shape policies and practices at the government, banking, and corporate levels to drive support to those who are most vulnerable. But I hope we're also not immune to the crisis. Branches have been closed to foot traffic since March, except those we were delivering people through our drive-through capabilities and have maintained service as best we can. Half of our staff is in those branches, another half are teleworking at home. Only essential personnel are reporting to those facilities. The goal is to make sure that our staff and those we serve remain safe. We're following the science, we're following the data. As the chairman said, we don't know when we're going to be on the other side of this, but we're going to take every precaution that we can to make sure that we are there to help people get through it and that those we serve remain safe. Last year, we initiated an impact and sustainability assessment of our branches. This is a process that was accelerated by the pandemic, and based on this analysis, we closed 5 branches. Again, we are not immune to the economic realities that we are all facing. We have fortunately been able to continue to extend services to those communities and their residents from nearby locations by mobile, online, telephone, and shared branch, and our ATM network, and by other means. I want to thank everyone for trusting Hope with your precious resources. I want to thank our newer members. You all may have seen that we have been fortunate recipients of deposits from major corporations, Netflix initially, Chipotle, and others are also looking at ways to support Hope's work to close the gaps that disproportionately affect people in places like Selma, Alabama, which happens to continue to be one of the poorest places in the state of Alabama. Those transformational deposits allow us to import capital into the communities we serve and continue to meet the housing, small business, family needs that confront our members disproportionately compared to others. This picture has several of our borrowers in the circles below. You see the words from moments to a movement. Each member that we serve, every business that we support, every home buyer that we finance, every community facility that helps children get a decent education, quality health care, those each are moments that combine, continue the movement that people have been fighting for generations in this country. We're proud to continue this legacy. I want to urge everyone to continue to be a member owner of Hope, to support us as we push this work forward. I'm proud that we have very high levels of civic engagement among Hope members. When people have a stake, when they're homeowners, when they have a bank account, they vote at higher levels. They go to their PTA, they go to their local community organization, they go and hold their elected officials accountable. I want to encourage everyone to vote like your lives, like the state of our democracy depends on it, because with all the upheaval we're experiencing, it very well may. If you go to our website, www.hopecu.org, you'll see information, nonpartisan, voter resources on our website. Continue to support us. We'll continue to pray for you and do everything we can to make you proud of your financial institution. Thank you. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. And as you can see, 26 years, a lot has changed. And I remember early on when Hope was right here in Anderson. I also remember Dr. Brooks, who was an advocate for Hope, and we certainly mourn his passing. But I remember we had a function here at Anderson, may have been in this room, where Dr. Brooks was there, and all he talked about was hope. And that's what we try to provide everyone, is hope. I'm not sure if we got any questions from anyone.
We do not have any questions.
All right, if we don't have any questions, are there any questions from anyone here? All right, if not, I thank all of you for being here, and I'm going to officially call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.